locked up and on overdrive. You came into my life and turned on the light. Now that I cleared the path, there's no looking back. Yeah, I've got my peace and serenity, 'cause you came to me. I have clarity when you're next to me, next to me. Finally, there's no clouds that I can see. You open my eyes, now I'm soaring flying high. You give me clarity, clarity. I love it when I can make a decision and stick with it. You gave me the sign that I can be anyone and do anything. Now that I cleared the path, there's no looking back. Yeah, I've got my peace and serenity, 'cause you came to me. I have clarity when you're next to me, next to me. Finally, there's no clouds that I can see. You open my eyes, now I'm soaring flying high. You give me clarity, clarity.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to another Magic Monday live stream. I am your host, Steven, here with you to go over the charts, the latest in all of the financial markets, as we will be doing every Monday this year for the most part, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you to everybody joining me live in the chat. I see Jensinius, Dkoch, Mike, Josh. How you guys doing? As always, if you guys have any chart requests, questions, cool trade ideas, whatever, drop them in the chat and we will look at them later in the stream. If you guys haven't already, please like the video, subscribe, turn on the notifications, all those good things. Helps me out a lot. Good morning, Sketch. Your reach won't get nerfed here. Don't worry. Yeah, that was pretty crazy, huh? Nikita is just nuking the reach of crypto Twitter with the GMs. Good morning, Zach. I've noticed that over the last few months, like when I post anything about crypto, I get like 3 views on a tweet now. It's like we've erased the entire X community there. It's been It's been pretty brutal. Yeah, it's a good idea, Alan. We're gonna figure out how to get the rights to that. GM Matt. Quick couple of housekeeping items. We've got the launch last week of the free Magic Lines Discord. It's a pretty sweet community for anybody who's a trader or investor. I'm in there every day posting analysis on crypto, on equities, on commodities. So hot right now. Would love if you guys would join if you haven't already. There's a link in the description below for those of you who are interested. We've also got the Magic Lines Premium at magiclines.xyz. Also in the description, we got a little discount code for you guys and a free trial if you want to check it out, see if it's right for you. But without further ado, let's jump into the charts. Big thing this week we had, for anybody who didn't see it, Jerome Powell released a hostage video over the weekend. You guys see that? I guess the Trump admin is suing his ass over some upgrades to the building or something like that. I don't know, but there's definitely a war going on between the administration and the Fed. The markets reacted to it quite substantially at the futures open. We'll talk about that. Let's jump right into stonks, I guess. Before that, quick peek at the economic calendar. We got a couple things on the docket this week. Main thing is we got CPI on Tuesday. So, would be skeptical of any moves you see until this number is released tomorrow. PPI Wednesday, retail sales, unemployment on Thursday. It's a pretty action-packed week. So probably Tuesday or Wednesday for an inflection point in the markets, I'm thinking. Overall, I remain sort of neutral on equities right now. Not a strong up or down bias, but I do think that the risks are skewed to the downside at the moment. And so I've basically expressed this by hedging out some of my portfolio with some futures and with some NVIDIA puts. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we've basically been ranging sideways since November here. I think that the NASDAQ especially, if I were to clean this up and zoom out a little bit here on the weekly chart, we had what looks to be a break of structure to the downside in November. We've been retracing up and what looks like a bit of a corrective formation to me. I think I had mentioned last week that we could potentially see a move into this area of daily demand here around 26.2, 26.3 on the NASDAQ. I think if we push up into this and clear it, we're probably good for upside. But I would prefer to get really long on a move towards the downside of this consolidation here, ideally into around the 24K mark. And I think that would provide a pretty interesting spot to long a lot of risk. The NASDAQ in particular looks a lot weaker than some of the other equity indexes to me. YM, the Dow Jones, for example, looks pretty strong, a lot stronger than the NASDAQ. S&P 500, a little sus. We got maybe a little bit of a rising wedge here into the prior all-time high. So good time to be careful. We'd certainly break out of this to the upside, but this is a formation you often see some sort of sweep and break down from. And if that happens, potentially we just see like 6,800 or so, 6,750. That could potentially be an interesting spot to look for some sort of accumulation, some sort of sweep, some sort of sign that the downside momentum has subsided, and to take a long there. Otherwise, I think on the weekly chart here, we've got some interesting demand. This weekly order block here. Maybe we take out that November 6,500 low or so and continue higher. But I think some areas of stocks look a lot stronger than others. There's a particular segment of the market I'm looking to get long in right now. So we're going to talk about that later. NVIDIA in particular, I had called out as looking a little bit sus to me. So you can see a world where we are putting in a little bit of like a inverted head and shoulders here. This area I have highlighted is the gap up from the massive earnings beat in November that ended up dumping us. So pretty critical area to see what price has done. Like I suspect we're doing a little distribution in here, and then we're going to roll over to the downside. Again, possibly just taking out the lows of this consolidation and then resuming upward. But depending on how the rest of things start looking in the market, we do have this enormous high time frame area of demand here, stretching from 87 to 153 or so. So we could see a deeper retrace towards 110, 115 or so if things get a little ugly. But even that I would view as a pretty generational buying opportunity. I think if I zoom in a little bit here, if we're able to close a daily candle on NVIDIA, back above 189, 190 or so, I would probably punt on this idea. That would then look to me like some sort of like reaccumulation instead. Just a little move into this demand. So if we do get that close and kind of chill here for a bit, I think this would probably end up pushing higher. But I view this as a good time to just be cautious because, again, the cost of being wrong is not that high to the upside, and the cost of being wrong to the downside is quite a bit. Good morning, Marty. How are you? What's up, Franco? What's up, PD Marks? Thanks, guys, for joining. Got a nice turnout today in the chat. Love to see it. So, yeah, neutral equities overall with some pockets of strength. We'll talk about that later. Commodities, on the other hand, especially our boy silver. Oh boy. So, silver, gold over the weekend reacted quite bullishly after the Powell video was released. You can see we had a bit of a gap up on the futures open here. I've been bullish silver for quite some time. I mean, this chart just looks insane. The market seems to basically be very on board the idea that the federal government is just going to sort of take over the Fed at this point and print money, and all fiat is going to zero. Silver is going to the moon. Gold is going to the moon. Platinum is going to the moon. Palladium is going to the moon. It's all going to the moon. So if you guys don't have any exposure to precious metals in your portfolio, would highly recommend getting some. There's no time like the present. I was initially worried about a deeper pullback here on silver after this huge move up, but I think that is not going to happen at this point. And I think we're going to get a close above this zone today that will validate this as a pretty juicy high time frame order block here. So if you guys get a pullback into this kind of like $82 or lower region, either sometime this week, or if we push up and then get a nasty kind of correction later on, I view this as an area to get long and strong if you're not already. One of the trades we took in Magic Lines last month was a GDX. This is the Van Eck Gold Miners ETF. I think we got in here around $72 or so. So it's been a nice move thus far. You can see on the weekly we are basically full blue sky breakout status here. We've got a nice new little weekly order block here around the $88 mark. So for those of you looking for high time frame entries, this is a good area to do so, in my humble opinion. So again, like silver, whether that is this week, unlikely, I think, or some future pullback, some nasty corrective move, that's going to be something to keep in mind on your charts for entries there. I'm pretty bullish on the gold miners. The gold miners are kind of sexy to me because they're like it's like long convexity on gold. You know, if gold is going to have a serious rip this year or in the coming years, like these things could rip very, 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 very hard. You can see if I zoom even further out on the gold miners chart, you know, we are in generational breakout territory here. I mean, this is a range dating back to 2011. So we've broken out of a 5,000 day, 14, 15 year range. No reason to fade this, in my opinion. And on the monthly chart, that's our monthly order block. You can see we already tagged it this month, but any future retracements into this zone, which will probably look pretty nasty on the lower time frames, that, in my opinion, is going to be a pretty sexy buy there. So commodities continuing to look amazing. And as I've charted before, just the silver Bitcoin chart for reference is hilarious, first of all. But you can see here on the monthly chart, silver Bitcoin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be our 6th consecutive mega bullish candle. The market likes silver. It doesn't like Bitcoin. It is what it is, boys. The gold Bitcoin chart, which is something, you know, people are more commonly looking at, you've got a similar situation going on here. We have broken the high time frame downtrend at a very high time frame accumulation range here, and this is like a pretty sexy little double bottom at this range. So I think gold BTC is going right about here. And in terms of percentage gain terms, that's a 492% or so move for gold versus Bitcoin. So no need, in my opinion, to be overweight Bitcoin at this point. I think if anything, you should be overweight gold. The returns are better. The volatility is lower. It's a pretty sexy setup. For you ICT smart money concept folks, want to look to see if we close above this box this month. That would validate this as a high time frame breaker. So a retrace into it is likely to be met with further expansion, in my humble opinion. So I don't see any end in sight to the precious metals crypto outperformance. You have been notified. Speaking of crypto, let's check in on our favorite redheaded stepchild of an asset class. Not too many updates here for you guys. My bias on the high time frame is the same for Bitcoin. I think this is a monthly fair value gap, strong monthly order flow. We've swept the high of December. Whether we come up and sweep this again, I'm not sure, but I am, pretty sure that we are coming for 74K, at which point we may get a long setup on a reclaim of this level. Will it be a better play than longing silver? I don't know. But for those of you who trade perps, that's the first main area of interest I have to get long on this. The weekly candle last week for Bitcoin, not a great weekly candle. Closed as a pretty obvious sweep of that monthly liquidity. So on the lower time frame, this 89K low is definitely a target. I think we probably get some move up here and then down like this. I think it's still very possible that Bitcoin finds some short-term demand here in like the 88K region and maybe pushes up even for like another move. But it's just not worth trading to me. It's messy, and I would much rather look for something up into this zone here from 98 to probably 103K or so. That would be like a very interesting short to me if we get some sort of market structure break there, targeting all of this liquidity down here and this major 74K level here, which is chilling above all of this high time frame demand. Again, I think that's where price is going. I don't see the need to be longing this stuff right now. I don't see the need to be overweight. I have less crypto than I've ever had since the dawn of crypto. So it is what it is. Within crypto, we've got our spaghetti charts here we can consult. And it's kind of interesting to look at what's been strong since the opening of the year. Do you guys know what the strongest coin has been this year? Any guesses? I feel like I haven't seen anybody talking about this. Render has been pumping hard, which I think is fairly interesting. Render, the biggest gainer. Second place, Polygon. Not the best of signs. And then in third, we've got Pepe, which put in quite the god move this year so far. Fartcoin, not a bad guess, Alan. I think Fartcoin is in the number 4 slot. I think has a better looking chart than Pepe. Let's take a look at Render. Not the prettiest looking high time frame chart. We did have a pretty nice sweep out of this zone during 1010 and then a pretty clean retest of this $1.20 level. And some pretty notable weekly expansion here. So I think there's going to be a long trade on Render to at least this order block here, 322 or so. Marty, I didn't tell you to short silver. Don't give me that. We closed the silver short in profit. It's like you don't even listen to me. Hurts me. Yeah, so render could be interesting if we get that Bitcoin pullback. I'll have to keep an eye on this one. Looks short-term topped for now. Would be interesting if we get kind of like a run of this accumulation range down towards the 0.68 fib around $1.80 or so. Could be a pretty sexy trade. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. Would not recommend longing it here though. So we might be able to get pretty solid trade out of that. We'll keep an eye on it. Other stuff that looks strong in crypto, if you want to be in crypto, privacy coins, specifically Monero, is just continuing to have a day here. I may have to figure out how to get long Monero. I was watching Zcash before, which I will pull up in a second, but this is pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating theme in general, honestly. This just complete destruction of Bitcoin relative to the privacy coins. I know people on the timeline have been commenting that the Zcash pump is just some sort of engineered exit liquidity by insiders or whatnot. But like, if that were the case, like I don't think Monero would be this strong. There seems to be like a genuine rotation of capital out of Bitcoin into privacy coins. Let's see if I can find any sort of entry here. My God. So this is last week's expansion candle. What we want to see on Monero is some sort of pullback on the 4-hour chart, ideally like above this mid-range. And then we want to look for some sort of break of structure confirmation, something like that. We can maybe frame a long. But this looks really good. I mean, if I was in crypto, this is what I would be in. I don't currently have a position in Monero. Zcash had a bit of an interesting week. So for those of you who weren't following the shenanigans, I guess a bunch of the devs resigned right around here. I know Mert was saying that this is FUD for reasons I'm too smooth-brained to understand. I do think that Zcash looks good for a long entry at some point. So I think as I talked about last video on the last week's stream, would be expecting this monthly low to hold around 301 and looking for a trade up to the monthly high around 555, but looking for something to confirm on the daily, which I don't see yet. But a really interesting setup could be some sort of daily sweep candle printing below 359 or so. And then some sort of market structure shift on the hourly chart. And that could be a pretty sexy trade if we're able to get that. Be a solid 3-1. In reality, I think at a minimum, you know, this order block here probably gets tagged up around 650. So potentially interesting trade on the horizon. Everything else still looks kind of sus to me. Ethereum, no real changes to the idea I outlined last week, which is similar. Like I'm still expecting 2620 to get tagged on ETH at like a bare minimum. The December low 2716. Not interested in longs until that happens. And if for some reason we are able to come up here and take out the 3477 range high, I still think there's going to be an opportunity for a short setup back down, and that could be an interesting trade. But this looks just very messy to me and not appealing here on the lower time frame. We're just trapped within a sloppy range, and I would probably recommend ignoring it for the most part. I think similar to Bitcoin, I could see a trade materializing here if the setup gives. We get some sort of run of the lows, maybe take that up to the high. But as far as like high time frame swings, I don't see anything amazing. All right, let's move over to some other themes I want to talk about. I want to talk about Tesla. And I will be publishing my piece on Tesla today, 100%. Otherwise, I'll give you all $500. Okay, I'm sorry for not getting that out last week, but yeah, Tesla I continue to be very bullish on. Looking for mid 700s, 1,000 at some point, hopefully this year, but maybe by 2027, 2028. Been kind of wondering and waiting to see what's going to happen in this range as we just swept out the high of this range. The downside scenario, in my opinion, would be a revisit of around like the 350, 315 area, at which point I think longs would look pretty sexy. But I'm open to the idea that we are putting in a bottom here. And the bull case for that would be that this is our prior bullish zone here that broke the all-time high. And this could just be a pullback to the mid-range, and then we go. You can see we did get a pretty nice weekly sweep candle last week. I think I still want to see this bearish fair value gap up here around 460 mitigated first, because we could bounce off of this and then dump. But this looks pretty good at the moment on the 4-hour chart. And if we get a retrace down into this order block here, around 436 or so, this would be a really interesting point to look for some sort of sweep, some sort of lower time frame shift, and then potentially take a long. And that could be like a tremendously awesome risk reward. I think it's worth just buying a little bit here at this point if you are a really high time frame guy and you don't want to sit around staring at lower time frame charts all day, because we did get this sweep and then close above the order block. So sometimes it just goes like it did here. But I'll be continuing to monitor this in the Discord on the lower time frame. The reason I'm so bullish on Tesla is I don't believe that the options market is pricing in the right tail risk correctly when it comes to robo-taxis. The robo-taxi business of Tesla, I think, is like insane. And I think it would just completely transform the entire company, right? From especially the automotive side of the business. It turns it from like a automotive manufacturer into basically a software business. They're no longer selling cars, they're monetizing miles. And in a world where the entire automotive industry just shifts to automated self-driving and basically becomes a software business, Tesla just has like an enormous competitive advantage. I don't think anybody will ever be able to compete with the margins that Tesla has on their on their on their robotaxi. This is kind of like pretty well emphasized right now by the structural difference between Tesla and Waymo, because Waymo has the lidar and these other kind of more expensive physical components in the car. They don't have the same profit margins that Tesla has on a per mile business, and I don't see how they could get there. So I think Tesla's always going to have a pretty major structural advantage in that department. In addition, they just have like a huge data advantage when it comes to the millions upon millions of miles they have logged in their self-driving cars already. That's just like a moat that I don't see anybody breaking for a long time, 5-10 years maybe at a minimum there. So that's pretty sexy. They've got like a massive manufacturing edge in terms of like how they have their factories laid out, their batteries, like all this stuff. It's just, I know a lot of people like to hate on this stock and hate on Elon, but like I'm a pretty big Tesla bull, and I feel good about owning it, and I feel good about buying it all the way down to 250 if for some reason they give me that price. But I am pretty loaded up on this and pretty bulled up on this. I don't know if you guys are Tesla bulls or you guys own any, but yeah, it's looking pretty sexy to me. Even just from a basic high time frame range here. Like I said, I mean, you're buying this right now at the mid range of a pretty high time frame zone. So if you are a little more cautious, you can wait for a pullback and like another confirmation and get in. But I like it here. It's pretty sweet. So look for that article to come out today on my Substack. I believe it's magiclines.substack.com. If you guys want to check that out, if you're not already subscribed, I'll be releasing that today after the video at some point. Gensinius, 20% allocated to Tesla, waiting for the signal to all in. Nice. I'm basically 100% allocated. I'm just looking to like stack leverage on top of it because I'm a degenerate. I'm looking at the, I wish I had the option chain out in front of me, but I'm basically like buying the furthest dated I think it's June 2028, like 990 or something like that strike price. Because I do think there's a world where this goes to like $2,500 and that option just absolutely prints money. So hopefully that's the case. What do I have next on the docket here? Oh, other thing that's potentially interesting for Tesla this year. Take this with an enormous grain of salt, but big event to watch this year is the SpaceX IPO. And I thought one of the interesting things that came out this week was our boy, the SPAC scammer master himself, Chamath Palihapitiya. He posted like what I thought was an interesting little thesis on the last All In pod. I don't know if anybody saw it, but basically said he thought that SpaceX wouldn't IPO, it would reverse merge into Tesla, which could potentially be just like so sick if you're a Tesla shareholder. So that's a pretty fun little free roll to have, I think, right now, if you own the stock. Worth noting, the Kalshi market currently has the IPO at like 60% before August and 80% chance overall. So something to watch. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and the last major thing I want to talk about in this stream, is the space narrative. So the SpaceX IPO, I think, has been kicking off like a pretty interesting trade opportunity in other space related stocks. And I want to credit whoever, I can't remember who you are, but you dropped a Rocket Labs request, I think, and I don't know if it was last week's stream or a stream a couple weeks ago, and got me thinking about this. And I think this is actually like a really awesome trade right now. And I think a lot of these stocks look really, really sick. I'm going to be working on a deeper write up on the space stock bucket and talk about that in the Discord, and probably have a little Substack piece on it as well. But I want to talk about two companies here on stream that I really like and that I think look sexy. The first is a company I've traded in the past. It is ASTS Space Mobile. So this chart zoomed out looks really, really hot. So hot right now. I'm basically just looking for entries on any pullbacks at this point. Like when the weekly chart looks this good, and I'm trying not to think too hard, I'll generally just pull up my 4-hour moving averages. Just as like a general principle, when you're in like really bullish weekly order flow, the 4-hour trend, so this is the 13, 25, 32 MAs, if you ever want to put that on your chart. Any pullbacks into the weekly trend are generally like pretty interesting spots to add for higher time frame positions. And then, you know, you can see there's a really nice, this is the 50, 100, 200, just very, very bullish, higher highs, higher lows. It all looks pretty sexy. So this stock I'm pretty bulled up on. Trying to think what would be a really sexy entry here on the lower time frame. Like in a perfect world, if we got $77, that would be pretty sweet. I don't know if it's going back that low, but yeah, I'll be buying this all the way down. So ASTS looks sexy. The other stock I came across that I want to share with you guys that looks pretty sick is a company called Iridium. This is ticker IRDM. So this thing has been sold off into the ground pretty hard. What do we pull back? 76% from the all-time high. Iridium is an interesting stock because it is a little less like speculative than some of the other stuff in the space bucket, right? A lot of the stocks that are kind of space stocks, they are trading on a lot of like hopium and future kind of like what if, what could happen. And you know, it's kind of like with the altcoins. There's not really any revenue or cash flows attached to them yet. It's all just speculative. But Iridium is an interesting business because it has like an established business. It has like an established moat. It has like established recurring revenue, all that good stuff. They're kind of similar to what's the SpaceX satellite company? Starlink. God. They're kind of similar to Starlink in that they're basically like a low Earth orbit satellite communications network. I think they've got like 66 satellites. They cover like every single square inch of the globe, including oceans, the polar regions, and just kind of random remote areas where the traditional coverage doesn't exist at all. So what's interesting about this company is it's kind of used in a more sort of like industrial, like military setting than Starlink is. It's sort of like last line of defense / redundancy. Like if you really, really, really need a sort of like low bandwidth connection, not so good for streaming Netflix, but like pretty good if you just need to maintain some sort of connection to your military network. So it's kind of like a space telecom stock, basically. And from a TA perspective, I think it's putting in a pretty interesting little formation here at the range low. This is a setup I like to trade a lot, where you have, you know, your weekly up close candle that puts in the low and then close above it. That gives you a breaker. So you can frame like a really tight entry on this stock right now. Like if you're buying here at like 19 bucks, you could probably just stick a stop 16, 18 or so, 16% downside. And then the upside is like all the way back to range highs here, probably, you know, so this would be like a 200% move to 60 bucks. So I think the risk reward on this is like awesome. And this is probably a pretty sexy play for options as well. I got to check out the options chain, but it wouldn't shock me if, like, because there hasn't been like a ton of movement in the last, you know, few months, like volatility might be low. So it'd be interesting to check to see what the implied volatility currently is on some leap options relative to historical vol. Because if it's lower, then this could be like a mega banger, money raining from the skies. So that's my hot stock tip for the week. Estens, do you think it matters if their technology is 20 years behind? So first of all, like, I want to make it clear that I don't have much of an edge in pontificating on the fundamentals of companies. I like to chart things. I like to trade liquidity. I like to trade price action. And I like it when there is confluence between an idea I have on a chart and some fundamentals, right? So in a world where SpaceX is IPOing and everybody just wants to get long space stuff as like a proxy, we don't care about that much. Like, this is just similar to crypto, where you just get a trend and everybody starts buying it, and you just ride the trend, right? But if I were to pontificate on this, no, I don't think it matters that the technology is 20 years behind. I think you're talking about like SpaceX or Starlink. I think in a world where Starlink is getting a bunch of business, you could say that the bull case for this company would be that you want redundancy for your internet connection, right? Like, I as a day trader have multiple internet connections because I want redundancy. That redundancy is valuable to me. So in a world where SpaceX / Starlink just gets more and more coverage, I don't think that's bearish for this company. I think it would be bullish, because the more people that start to have like a bunch of Starlink, especially in kind of like enterprise settings or kind of government military settings, like the more there is a need for a redundant connection, which would, you know, drive demand for Iridium. I think like that's how I would think about it. So yeah, again, I'm viewing it as just like a range trade, range low, range high. You've got a mid range there, right? If you want a TP, but it's basically just like a bunch of air. You know, we got to get through this chonky supply here, but like once we do, there's nothing till this region. Pat, you say implied vol is kind of medium. Yeah. All right. That's good. That's good. I like that. And yeah, this is definitely It's reminiscent of the Coinbase fractal, you know? It's the old inverted head and shoulders within inverted head and shoulders. I like it. This is similar to Zoom as well. Although Zoom is doing this in kind of a slightly different context of the chart. But yeah, it looks hot. Again, like I'm mostly talking about this from like sort of like a don't put your entire portfolio in this, but like when I look at the risk reward is so skewed. And so even though this might fail, I might look stupid like a high percentage of the time, the payoff is so high. And if that trade is taken with options and the implied vol of options is not particularly high at the moment, you know, there could be like a tremendous convexity in that payoff. So looks pretty sexy. Longest dated is July 26. Yeah, that's not ideal. That's not ideal. Yeah, you could always roll it. You know, I frequently just treat these trades just like leveraged stock trades. So I'm often buying, you know, I might be buying like a strike price down here, and the delta might be 50, and it might basically just trade like leveraged stock, and that's okay too. It's still like a very, you know, we're talking about 200% here. It's like how much how much leverage convexity do you need? Is 200% not good enough? I mean, I'll still put options on top of it for sure. What's the farthest dated strike price, Pat? Be curious to know what that is right now. I've just bought some common stock here this morning on this. I don't have a full position size on it yet, and I haven't fully fleshed out the options component of the trade, but figured it was cool to share. $30. $30 is probably a little. I don't know that $30 July 26 is like mega appealing. So if that's like the furthest dated strike price and the furthest dated time, you know, I am much more inclined, like if I'm going to trade options, to just trade the deep in the money options and just treat it like levered stock. Otherwise, happy to just, you know, take a margin trade on the portfolio if that's something that you could do. And again, like the local low here is probably a pretty sexy stop loss. So that's the idea. Stay tuned for more space stuff. I think you're going to see a lot more space charts from me in the near future. It's a fun thing to talk about. All right, let's look at some of the questions you guys have. Let's see. Jensinius, GeoMX, GOM Space. Let's take a look at GOM Space. What does GOM Space do? They do space. Yearly chart. It's a nice 2025 candle. I like that. Yeah, this looks pretty hot. This looks like expansion, retrace, consolidation, and another leg of expansion. This is your next bearish zone up here. So this is pretty much just air until $28 or so. So 30% up from here. But if I were to refine this down a little bit more, I mean, this is the actual last real demand in this zone, or supply rather. So that's $40. 82% as a relatively conservative target. I would say that looks pretty hot. I like that. Be looking just for like the last sweep of liquidity. Was that a sweep? 1354, 1352. Yeah. So this could be your stop loss, like the last weekly liquidity sweep. What does that give us? 2.2 to 1. It's a solid trade. This is something I would like buy a starter position in and then try to see if I can get some sort of pullback to add, and ideally some lower time frame liquidity sweep or something that I can maybe even frame a tighter stop around. But I think most of these space stocks, when I look at them, it looks like I kind of just want to immediately buy like a 30% or so position in all of them and then just kind of monitor for pullbacks and look to add. So that looks pretty hot. Thank you for that one. I'm going to add that to the list. Anonymous analyst, Sidu. Sidus space. Wow, that is amazing. 3K high and basically 0 for the low. Love that. All right, let's pull out the log chart here. Oh man, yeah, this is kind of a hard one to chart. This is funny. I don't know if I could look at you with a straight face and tell you that I see like a very clean setup on this chart. Let me see if I zoom in here. This looks very, very illiquid from the candles here. I guess you have some demand here. With something that's kind of sloppy like this, you know, I might just look for demand below the mid-range of the pump, ideally around the 0.618. So that could be an interesting entry because you get some liquidity here at like 250. So you could bid like a sweep of liquidity and the 0.618. That's probably what I would do if I wanted to long this. Definitely doesn't look as clean as other stuff, but I can make an argument for this turbo pumping, right? This is the typical path you follow. You got the initial pump, you mitigate some demand or supply in this case. See that nice tap of the 50? So you mitigate the supply, and then that gives you the first pullback. And then if you get that pullback towards the 618 and you go up again, now all of this supply has been mitigated, and now you can go for the range high or the range breakout, depending on how high this wants to go. But as a trade, you know, you generally want to be just targeting like the major liquidity points. And even that can probably be like a 3 to 5 to 1 risk reward, depending on how you're able to actually frame your entry. So yeah, I'll keep it on the watch list. I'll keep an eye on it. You got 4,000 shares from $1.34. Well, that's a good entry, my friend. I love that. What made you buy it? I'm curious to know. I don't know anything about this company. Jensenius GomX is satellites for Europeans. Okay. Pat, you want Voyager? Okay. VOYG. I'm assuming that's Voyager. Voyager Technologies. IPO'd last year. So, classic IPO candle right there. Very Coinbase coded. I love that. Did we get a sweep there? What was the low? 2610, 2614. I guess that was technically a sweep. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this looks pretty interesting, actually. It's the low of the quarterly candle you swept. Some nice respect to that low there. So in a perfect world, you get the push up into the supply, you take some of this liquidity, you get a pullback, and then somewhere on this pullback, you take the long. Be looking at, prior areas of demand. Maybe it tops out there. So yeah, if it were to like top out here, I would draw out the OTE fibs and then something kind of in the $27, $28 range would be pretty interesting for an entry. I don't like entering this stuff as it's pumping right into major supply. I like to see the supply get mitigated, and I like to see the pullback, and then I like to see some signatures on the lower time frame that indicate the pullback might be coming to an end, ideally in a bullish point of interest, right? So if I expect this to be demand that's going to hold, if I'm in a discount of the range, ideally in the kind of golden pocket 618, I start seeing some daily sweep candles, some corroborated by some bullish 1 hour structure, something like that. I might pull the trigger. And then the hope is that move takes you out of the kind of key supply, and then you're really, really golden, because then you've broken the higher time frame market structure, and then hopefully it's just price discovery. So pretty interesting stock to keep an eye on. Thank you, Pat. I love that. Let me see if anybody else has got anything here in the chat. Galaxy, David Myers. All right, we can pivot back to Galaxy. I grew a little sour on Galaxy because it's like a hybrid of two things I don't love as trades right now, which is crypto and data centers. And this looks pretty bad to me on the monthly. Like, this is a very high time frame range here. It's a pretty clean swing fail, followed by impulsive expansion with the fair value gap there. And then in addition to that, this is your monthly up close candle. We close below that. So this is a bearish change in the state of delivery. So generally, my expectation would be that price is going to at least attempt to revisit this structural low, because this is your market structure here, high time frame, something like that. So we could put in a higher low here and resume. I don't think it's necessarily that it's going to sweep out this low, but I'll be looking for some sort of demand down in there. Yeah, so like this region from like $8 to $13. Uh, yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not saying it has to go there, but that, like, given this structure, that's the only place I would feel chill looking for like a really high time frame long. Um, it could definitely kind of sweep out some more stuff here and then put in like a healthy bounce. But that, in my mind, would be an interesting spot to look for like a short, if anything. I don't I don't like this. I sold my Galaxy. I don't know, sometime in November. I forget when exactly, but it doesn't look great to me. I would not hold that relative to some other stuff I could hold. Even just viewing it in terms of this like higher time frame range, basic range principles. Like if you sweep out and fail one side of the range, you break structure. You tend to at least seek liquidity below the mid range here, and then the high minimum high time frame liquidity there would be around like 1740. So it's possible we could sweep that out and go, but I don't love it. I don't love it. All right, I'm gonna see if we got any other requests from people. Otherwise, we've been going for over an hour. Probably wrap it up soon. Zcash. All right, cool. One more. XPEV. What is XPEV? I think I own XPEV. Yeah, XPEN. I do own this. Look at that. I already have drawings on it for you. All right. What was past Steven thinking when he charted this and longed it? Chinese robotics. Yeah, this is in our robotics portfolio bucket. This is in the this is a Citrini stock. It's a Citrini stock. Let me start from scratch here. This is your basic kind of high time frame range. And I think this is like one double bottom kind of deviation of this range. I think that you can kind of see that this range has been reclaimed pretty cleanly. So I had $45, $46 as a target on this. This is just the trade to the mid-range. Ideally, a move towards range highs, $74. So that's kind of how I had that framed initially when I bought it. See if there's anything on the weekly here. I don't know. This whole thing right now is just sort of like a bit of a messy sideways consolidation. Wouldn't shock me both if it broke out or if it rejected and came back and swept out the low of this range. This would be like a really interesting long because you've got some unmitigated demand chilling here. I'll label that with a different color. Yeah, and that's your demand responsible for breaking structure. So this is like a really juicy level actually. So if we get a move down back into the 15s or lower, I think that's a pretty sexy long. What does that look like if I plot this entire move out? Yeah. Yeah, I like this. So you get kind of like a double bottom, solid expansion move. You get your change of character here, sweeping out that high. Now you've got a consolidation with some pretty solid acceptance above this area. And so we could see like a sharp move down into 15. And I think that would be a buy. This is like a setup I use a lot actually in trading. So I like it. I don't know if it's going to go to new highs from here. It could. It could, but this is kind of like very low confidence where we are right now because we're in a range and we're at the mid range. So mid range is like you're flipping a coin on where this thing's going to go. The best trading setups come when you have like a confirmed move like this. You've got an accumulation, and then you've got like a key area just chilling right below that consolidation, and then you're looking for some sort of like lower time frame like breaker setup, right? So like an order block that runs liquidity into this area, close back above it, creating the breaker, and then that's your long entry if you're a trader. Otherwise, I like just setting limit orders like around 1570 or so for like an investment portfolio and buying it there. But like if you don't own any, it's still like a good buy because again, I think the upside is like over 100% from here. You just might endure like a 30% drawdown en route to that 100%. So maybe you buy a little here and maybe you save the rest of it for that low. But I like it. I like the stock and I like the setup. I think that we are currently just reacting off of this supply. Yeah. Yeah, so this is kind of the setup I was talking about with the last chart we were looking at. I forgot the name of it. Where when you have the reversal form, there's usually like the last kind of main critical area of supply. Price tends to mitigate that supply and reject, which is usually what gives you the pullback, and then you position, and then on the next move, if you're correct in your bullish thesis, you clear this area of supply, you break the high time frame structure, and then you're golden. So I like positioning after these areas have been mitigated like this. But again, like the most ideal way for that to happen would be for me like a retest to this demand and like a run of this consolidation. Then that would be like a pretty A tier setup in my humble opinion. If you get the range low, if you get rejection, move back down here like that. This is like A tier, S tier setup even, right? Because this would be a breaker if that were to happen. Why is that a breaker? Because it's the order block that runs the consolidation into the demand, and then you trade above it, ideally with an impulsive move marked by a fair value gap on this leg up. And then if you've got that fair value gap overlapping with the breaker, that's the old unicorn setup. And then your trade risk reward looks something like that with your stop below the low. And then, you could take a 2-to-1 if you want to be conservative. You could take it to the range high, or if you want to just YOLO it as an investment trade, then I guess you just hold on to it forever and maybe shave some profits on the way up. But that's the entry, and that would be like a really sick entry if that were to happen. So thank you for bringing that stock up. I probably should add this to my watch list because that's actually a pretty good setup to keep in mind. Maybe I'll drop a little alert there. Thank you, Pat. All right, cool. I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. Thank you for joining me. It was cool to see so many people in the chat today. Looking really good in the commodities land, looking good in the space trade. Equities, we're going to wait and see a little bit. Crypto, God help us, but them's the breaks. Should be an interesting year. Should be one of the greatest trading years ever, I think. There's some pretty interesting stuff on the horizon for us. Interesting times we're living through in these fourth turning times. So thanks for tuning in. I will see you guys next Monday. Maybe I'll drop another video this week, and then be sure to check out the Substack, check out the free Discord. Come say hello if you like. I'll see you guys in there. Thanks, guys.